If I had to tell you in one word what my entire literary work is all about, I would say families. If you give me 2 words, I'll say unhappy families. If you give me 3 words, you have to read my works.
A life summed up in a few words. Amos Oz's books have been translated into 35 languages, reflecting the universal appeal of the Israeli writer. This year, the Prince of Asturias Foundation is honouring him with its 2007 Award for Letters. The author of some 20 novels exploring human nature and familial relations, Oz is also an advocate of the two-state solution in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In 1978, he co-founded the Peace Now movement. He talked to EuroNews at his home in the Negev desert.
What is this country today?
Well, it's a complex story. Israel is a fulfilled dream, a dream come true. As such, it is disappointing. Dreams only remain wonderful and rosy and perfect as long as you don't fulfill them. Once you fulfill a dream, it is slightly disappointing.
You say that Israel for the media is a bad Western movie.
Yes.
Why do they give this image of Israel?
Well, the media often portrays the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians in black and white. Either the Israelis are white and the Palestinians are black, or sometimes the Israelis are black and the Palestinians are white. It is not a black and white issue. It's a tragic clash between right and right. The Palestinians are in Palestine because they have no other land. The Israelis are in Israel because they have no other land. They will have to divide this country and agree upon turning the house into 2 apartments. There is no alternative.
Recently, the existence of neo-Nazi groups made up of young Israelis of Russian origin has relaunched the debate on the rule concerning the Israeli nationality, the right to the Israeli nationality. Should Israel in this moment look more closely at what happens at home?
I'm not too worried by the fact that half a dozen young Israelis were painting swastikas on the walls. These are common sociopaths and they exist in every society, and I don't think there should be such a big fuss about it.
Until a few years ago, not joining the army was shameful. Now it seems a legitimate demand. Why?
It's a syndrome of normalization, part of the fact that Israel has been there for 59 years now, very long time. Some people don't want to be soldiers.
Is it human? So nothing to do with the political situation, with the Lebanon war? Is it human?
It's human. It's human nature. Some people don't want to be soldiers everywhere, in every country. Now, Israel used to be special because of the existential threat, and everybody knew that there was an existential threat. I think the existential threat to Israel still exists, but I'm not surprised by the fact that some young Israelis simply don't want to be soldiers.
According to a recent official statement, Israel lives on the border with the hostile entity, Gaza, controlled by Hamas. Is it really a different situation, or it's just a change in the wording?
I think Hamas is first and foremost a disaster for the Palestinians. It's a fundamentalist regime, very similar to the Taliban in Afghanistan. It is oppressing the Palestinians in Gaza. First and foremost, it is a terrible thing for the Palestinians.
On the northern front, there is Syria. Could one hope for a realistic settlement?
I think Syria is essentially pragmatic. I think Israel and Syria could one day obtain a realistic solution because Syria has a secular and pragmatic regime. Although I don't like this regime and I don't think it's a good regime, but it's not a fanatical regime.
If Iranian President Ahmadinejad was here in front of you now, what would you like to tell him?
Go away. This man speaks like a Nazi and treats Israel like a Nazi. I won't have him in my home.
Israel is a country that is ready to face war, but is it ready to face peace?
I think it is eager to face peace. I think the vast majority of the Israelis are tired and exhausted of the war. The same applies to the Palestinians. And let me tell you something. Sometimes fatigue is the best solution for a crisis, not only between nations or between communities, but even inside the families.
You say Europe should stop its moralizing and patronizing attitude, and yet Europe is among Israel's major economic partner. Could you call it a difficult family relationship?
The relations between the Jewish people and Europe will always be complicated. Let us not forget that the Jews were the victims of Europe for many centuries. Let us not forget that the creation of Israel is partly a result of the victimization of the Jews by Europe. The Arabs were also the victims of Europe. Let us not forget this either. The conflict between Jew and Arab is a conflict between two former victims of Europe, which burdens Europe with a special responsibility to help both sides, not to moralize, not to wag the finger like this, but to help both sides genuinely. I think the Europeans have a certain inclination whenever they confront an international conflict. They have the tradition to launch an angry demonstration against a bad guy, signing an enthusiastic petition in favor of the good guy, and go to sleep feeling good about themselves.
What of his next project? Oz preferred not to talk about it, fearing that, in his words, X-rays will harm the fetus. And as for the book he regretted not writing, he says it's always the next one. That's why we write.
When you were a child, your dream was to be a book, not a writer,
Yes.
a book. Which one?
Well, that's a difficult question. It's like asking me which one of my children I like best. But I would be glad to be a book by Chekhov, a collection of stories by Chekhov, because he is my idol and in many ways my mentor in literature.
In a moment of your life, you change your family name in Oz. And is it true if you should choose now, the choice will be completely different?
Maybe it would be different. When I was 14, I rebelled against the values of my father. I decided to become everything my father was not and not to be anything he was. He was an intellectual. I decided to become a farmer. He was a scholar. I decided to become a tractor driver. He was short. I decided to become very tall. It didn't work, but I tried. And I changed my name to Oz, which means in Hebrew strength and courage. This is what I needed most at the age of 14 when I rebelled against my father. Now I am more confident about my strength. I don't need to put it in my name.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome.